Hey, it's Greg Harrelson here. Of course, Century 21, the Harrelson Group down in Myrtle Beach, but I wanted to do a video with somebody I've been working with for quite a long time. A lot of people have asked me over the years, hey, where do you get data from? And I end up saying, hey, I go to Kohl's, or, I think that the technical term or the technical name is Kohl Realty Resource. I think sometimes I go to Kohl Resource, I go to Kohl Realty, but it's Kohl Realty Resource. So I brought on Tyler Stinkin, and I got it. I think I got it. Stinkin. Yeah, I brought on Tyler. We've known each other for many years. He has, kind of been my rep that I've always used and talked to with that, within Kohl. And so I just thought I would just bring him on. He's got some, cool ideas that I think he can share with us on how we can, use data to our advantage and accelerate us and grow our business. So Tyler, thank you for taking the time to speak to us. And welcome. I appreciate this.
Absolutely. Appreciate the opportunity, Greg. Yeah. And I love, because when you talk about Kohl, right, we've been around for 70 years, 7 decades, right? And so we have a few different names of our product based on what industry you are, right? So we have a product for real estate, for insurance, home services, but end of the day, it's all this, it's data is what we provide. Yeah. Cell phone numbers and emails that are tied to a specific neighborhood, to a street. And we'll get into that in a little bit as well. But yeah, I mean, we have a legacy of helping small businesses with their prospecting, or even like police departments, right? So I remember when I started here about 16 years ago, Greg, Law and Order, the TV series, actually asked us for a set of our directories. We used to have all this data in print format, kind of like a phone book, where they had a law detective on one of the episodes say, hey, go grab the Kohl directory to see to call everybody in the apartment complex to see who they saw the break-in that happened, right? So when you use the different varieties of Kohl, that's why you've heard different ways to reference us. But end of the day.
Yeah. I mean, wasn't, and I believe, wasn't it at one time, it was like a phone book, but it was not the phone book size. It was a little bit bigger, right?
It was huge with multiple, with multiple volumes if you're in Houston versus Lincoln, Nebraska, where I live, right? And it was like a phone book, but by street name, right? So phone book was by last name. Ours were by street name, where you go and find Apple Street or Patterson Street, and it would tell you everybody who lived up and down that street by house number, right? 505, 506, 507. So any small business before technology would use it to go just call everybody up and down a neighborhood. You had a client on a street, well, let's work all the neighbors. Let's call all the neighbors. If you have an open house on Sunday, okay, let's call all the neighbors and invite them to the open house. Around just listed just sold in real estate. So what's interesting, Greg, is even before the pandemic hit, right? I was doing lots of interviews in January and February with these mega producers. We've done interviews in the past. I don't think we did an interview in the spring, but the tone that I was getting from a lot of these top producers were that they were going to double down on using Kohl to do outbound prospecting, to do an outreach, because end of the day, they were looking at their margins, and some of the money that they were spending on these lead sources, they weren't actually making money off of them. They're looking like, gosh, we're spending this amount of money, where, man, we could just call everybody, email everybody using Kohl and get the same results, but talk to more people and save money, right? And so now that the pandemic has happened and people can't prospect like they could, in the past, they might be doing door knocking or doing open houses, and depending on what part of the country you are, most likely you can't do that right now. And so what I want to talk to you and your audience today about, Greg, were just some ideas on how to prospect from home virtually right now to still get your name out there. And we met, and it's funny, I still remember one of my sales reps he called me one day. He was like, do you know this Greg Harrelson? He keeps on referring people over to us, right? I think you need to talk to Greg. And that's how we kind of connected. So I appreciate this partnership that we've had for a few years here now, Greg.
Yeah. And I want to hear like some ideas so you can give the audience some real good takeaways. But I think I just remembered something that I've never shared with you, and I think you'll find it kind of cool. So a lot of people know, if they followed me, they know I started in real estate 20 something years ago, and I came in to business as a part-time prospector for my dad.
Interesting.
Okay. And this was years ago. I was finishing college, or failing out of college. That's the real truth. And I needed something to do. So I got a part-time job with my dad, and he had me prospecting and helping him find people so he could go out and get listings, in other words, prospecting, setting listing appointments. Yeah. And I remember the first source of data was that big book.
I love it.
Yeah,
right?
that was how I cut my, and it's amazing we're still here today and I'm still doing business with you.
Yeah, no, and that's
today.
the deal. The concept of prospecting hasn't changed, right?
Sure.
I mean, it might be a little bit different than it was 10 years or 50 years ago, right? But I mean, end of the day, you need to talk to more people every day, and doing it by a geo area, by a street or by a subdivision helps you with those efforts, right? You want to maximize those efforts. And especially today when you can't door knock, what do? And so that's, again, I guess I have 3 strategies I can kind of share with everybody. I love your feedback as we go through them as well, Greg. And, the first one is engaging with local nonprofits in a specific area as a way to get your message and introduce yourself to new people. So it's just, local engagement. So when I say that right now, as you're going through a pandemic, I think it's very important to, as your outreach, to tell people that you are local, right? You're not an e-agent. You're not in, a different state. You are local. You're in the trenches with these people, right? And as out of your first outreach, as you're reaching out to people, when it's about someone else and not them, it just kind of lets everybody's guard down, because we all want to help other people right now. That's the good thing about a pandemic, is that it kind of brings people together at times, right? So I want everybody to think about different ways that you can maybe team up with a nonprofit. And so what I've heard from a lot of top producers is, food shelters, they're at like record lows right now, right? Because people aren't donating food. There's a big need for that right now with all the unemployment right now. So it's going to, like in Lincoln, Nebraska, we have the Lincoln City People Mission, right? So it's going to the People Mission and saying, hey, could I do a fundraiser on behalf of your organization at the Sheridan Lutheran Church on Sunday? And I'm going to call and email everybody within the, a mile of that location, or the entire zip code even, and let them know that we're going to be in the neighborhood collecting food, right? And so part of your outreach is, hey, my name is Tyler. I'm with XYZ Realty at 70th and Old Cheney. I wanted to give you a call and let you know we're doing this, right? We'll be at and if you can't make it, put food on your porch and we'll stop by and pick it up, right? Yeah. And then what you can do is then people let their guard down and you start having conversations with them, right? And you introduce yourself and then asking people, well, where are you from originally? Have you been in Lincoln your entire life? Oh, you're from Gothenburg. You still have family out there? Your parents still live out there? Have you thought about moving back there as well? Right? So you start asking people non-confrontational questions, right? And you'll start creating a need. What do you love about the neighborhood? Is there anything that you don't love about the neighborhood? Right? So, and then that's how you fill your pipeline with nurtures, right? Of people who are kind of raising their hands. Maybe during the food drive, you have an email sign-up list, right? Or things like that. Get more information about them. You brand it. You have to brand yourself, right, as being the industry expert as well. But that's a way for you to introduce yourself to more people. Think about blood banks. In Lincoln, where I'm at, and I hear this all across the country, especially right now, I work with a lot of insurance carriers that are promoting, like the big insurance carriers, one that's red that I'm presenting with here later, where they have things where like donate for dollars, where they team up with a nonprofit, and then they'll say, hey, if we can quote your insurance, we'll donate $5 to a local charity, is what they're doing, right? And so they're doing blood banks right now. Blood banks are at record lows. They need support, so just think of different ways. So what are your thoughts on something like that, Greg?
Yeah, so basically what I'm hearing you say is that it's just a soft introduction. It's a soft way to get into a conversation. So it could be, hey, Tyler, it's Greg Harrelson, Century 21, the Harrelson Group. Just wanted to touch base with you. We're actually supporting a local food bank that's not too far from the community, XYZ community. Yep. And I just wanted to reach out to some of the owners to kind of share with you what we're up to, some of the needs, and see if you may want to participate in donating some food products. So that would kind of be the way. So I introduce my name, I introduce my company's name, but I don't really put a lot of emphasis on that. I just then go into the food bank type of conversation, and then I let everything naturally unfold. So it's definitely a branding play, right? Definitely a branding play. And you, and you're likely to start, and you're probably going to build your database that way, because you'll establish some good rapport with people that you can say at the end, hey, well, I really appreciate you having the conversation and supporting the local charity, and one of the things that I do is I also support the community, making sure that they have good real estate information. And I send a newsletter out every once in a while for the neighborhood. What's your best email? I'll make sure you get on that. So you can enter in with the charity, and you can exit with building a database. And I think that's a brilliant thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And then during the conversation, I mean, again, it's reading the room during the conversation, but if you can ask questions, if the report's going well, how long have you lived in your neighborhood, right? And one of the things that Cole actually has, so when you go into our system, everybody, is you can map out a neighborhood or just find everybody in a zip code if you wanted to. Here's the 8,000 people in that zip code, but you can add length of residence to their profile. So you actually would know some of that information as you're calling them. But at the same time, you having people, well, how long have you lived in that neighborhood? Oh, 18 years. Gosh, that's awesome. You know, what do you love about the neighborhood? What don't you like? And you just start having conversation. And that's when you can start looking for buying signs, or I should say selling signs as well. So awesome. The other thing is like team up with a local restaurant or a food truck, right? As we know, those guys are struggling right now. And other restaurants, they need your help. They need your support, right? So if it's finding 2 or 3 restaurants in a zip code, and part of your campaign is just letting people know, hey, here's the local restaurants in your neighborhood that need your support, or having a food truck set up at the neighborhood park. Joe's Barbecue is going to be in your neighborhood park on, Sunday from noon to 2. We'll buy lunch for the first 10 families that stop by, things like that, just to engage with specific neighborhoods, right?
Yeah.
And then,
I like it.
And then the second strategy is, how do you make it happen, right? So leveraging technology to speed up the process, right? So we all have one of these guys. We all have a cell phone, right? So I always tell everybody, start small. You don't have to have a dialer. You don't have to have all these systems in place if you've never done it before. So if you're just starting out calling and doing things like this, just pick up the phone, right? Go lock yourself in a room, down in your basement, in an office, lock your room in for an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours in the day and make phone calls and just see what happens, right? Because you can make a lot of phone calls by manually dialing, right?
Absolutely.
But then once you have that down and you're comfortable, it's leveraging technology to help you with some of those things, right? So there's dialers out there that you can use where you can record a voicemail, and if somebody doesn't answer, you hit a button, or if they answer, you can talk to them, but hit next and you have to dial those numbers. There's, email deployment systems. So again, we have all the emails for a specific neighborhood. So you can take those emails, and you don't want to email all of Lincoln, Nebraska, right? I mean, you're just going to but you could email the 200 people in a neighborhood, right? With a subject line that resonates with them, right? That's something you could do to leverage technology as a way to do an outreach. Or even like a ringless voicemail systems. You guys ever use any ringless voicemail at all, Greg?
Sure. Yeah, I know them. I know about them. Yeah, I don't use them, but I do know what you're referring to.
Right. So we have clients that will, there's different companies called ringless voicemail, where you can then, let's say go to Cole, you grab the 300 cell phone numbers out of a neighborhood, right? You download that list, put it into Excel, and then you can upload it into a ringless voicemail. And that allows you to do, guys, is you can record a very descriptive voicemail, right? And then tell a story per se. So it could be telling a story of asking people to come support a nonprofit that you're doing. And you hit a button and it will drop the voicemails, and the people's cell phones never ring, right? So it lets you drop a voicemail all at once there. And again, tell a story. So I have a client that I recently interviewed, Greg, where he had sellers that lived on a really busy street. And they said, hey, John, you can sell our house, but we are not going to list it until you can find us a house in our dream neighborhood. We're not going to settle this time around. So he went into our product, grabbed the 500 and some cell phone numbers out of that specific subdivision, and then he dropped a voicemail, something like this. Hey there, my name is John. I'm a local realtor at 70th and Old Cheney. I wanted to give you a call because I have a great family that would love to live in your neighborhood, right? They currently live on Patterson Street right now, and it's a really busy street, and they live on the intersection. And honestly, they're a little nervous to have their kids even outside playing in their front yard. And they would love to live in your neighborhood, where it's a quiet neighborhood, big trees, the kids can kind of run around. And maybe when they get a little bit older, can go walk to Maxey Elementary when they get a little bit bigger. Was wondering if you know of anybody who might be looking to sell soon that hasn't listed their property, because I'd love to bring my buyers through it, right? But a very descriptive voicemail. In his case study, he had a retired couple where the husband called him back from that message. He actually sent an email as well, buyers looking in Edenton South subdivision, and got got a really high open rate from that. And so again, that's leveraging technology to get a story out there. And so he brought his buyers through that property. They loved it, got a pocket listing out of the deal. And then he leveraged that to sell their house on the busy intersection. So basically got 3 transactions from doing that effort. That's awesome. I guess I just challenge everybody here is think outside the box of leveraging technology, or even like your strategy of, if you have a family that wants to live closer to their in-laws, if you have a family that wants to live by a golf course, right? Or by a lake, use that as a way to do an effort to create your own listing leads that way by telling a story.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. Another good one. So what's the last one? What's the third one?
So the third one is
the whole approach of like the charity approach. Wow, it's such a soft approach, but man, it should really get people's attention. And for those out there that are a little bit intimidated by circle prospecting, maybe this is a way for you to enter into this game.
Exactly. Yeah. And so then it would basically having that same concept, but then who's your avatar is what I ask people. Who's your ideal prospect? So one of the things that Cole allows you to do is kind of get the analytics of data behind the scenes, right? So maybe you want to prospect to everybody, or you want to do an outreach for everybody who's been at their house for at least 8 years, right? Or maybe it's everybody who's been there for 8 years and they're above the age of 70, right? Because they're going to be more likely to downsize. So it's using some of those data analytics that are going to help you find people that are more likely to move, and then outputting that list as well and make it actionable. And that's where, again, if you've never done any cold calling before, any outreach like that, maybe instead of calling the entire zip code and inviting them to support a nonprofit, maybe you just call 2,000 people or 1,000 people out of those that are more likely to move, to make it a little bit more worth your time for those efforts, right? So that's, end of the day, I always tell people, figure out, it's a handyman. You can't be a jack of all trades, a master of none, right? So decide what sort of list you want to master, what sort of demographic you want to go after, and then use that like a system like Cole to get that data and make it actionable. Yeah. So those are the 3 kind of quick, easy strategies. And again, what's all nice about all 3 of them is that it's non-confrontational. It's for your starters out there who have never done the prospecting before. I think those are all things that anyone could kind of do today.
Yeah, and I think it's important, the last thing you said about, who is your avatar? It's like, because one of the things that happens is if you go too broad and you're like, okay, I'm going to start making calls, and you go too broad, then the broader you go, the less confidence you have.
Yep.
Okay, so the more narrow you go, if you start pulling up, say, a certain price point, a certain neighborhood, a certain zip code, a certain location, a certain property type. When you do that type of stuff, then it makes it very easy that before you go in and start calling, you can do a little bit of research for that narrow product, and you can figure out, okay, how many of those homes have sold recently, what addresses recently sold, what were the square foots of the properties that are sold, what are the average price ranges, and you can just spend 10 minutes doing a little bit of research on that avatar. So then when you go in and make those calls, you may or may not ever need to say any of that information. Maybe the conversations don't go there, but the fact that you know gives you confidence, and that's going to translate and make every conversation much more powerful.
Absolutely.
You'll establish rapport a lot better.
Exactly. So if I have that reference sheet printed out and I'm just spitting off those numbers during those conversations, wow, he is an industry expert. He knows what he's talking about, right? And that's what everybody wants when it's all said and done, when it comes to your profession, right? They want somebody who knows what they're doing and is going to help them get the best dollar for their house. And so you need a professional.
Yeah. So when you're calling a certain neighborhood and you're telling them, well, Myrtle Beach, this is what Myrtle Beach is doing. They don't really, they're not as concerned about what Myrtle Beach is doing. But when you say, here's what Avalon is doing, here's what Belgrove is doing, then all that, just being able to say, here's what your community, here's what's happening in your community, not in Myrtle Beach, in your community. What ends up happening, if you could visually see the person on the other end of the phone, here's what they do.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
They lean in and turn their ear to you because they want to pay attention because it has relevance to them. So that's a great way to use the technology and the data that you provide. Well, Tyler, you told me that you had a few things to share, And what I really love about your presentation today, it was just right. Here's 3 things. Yep. It's right to the point. They're action items. So anybody that's listening to this, feel free to reach out. Tyler, what's the best way for them to get more information on Cole?
I mean, at best is just call one of our inside sales reps, because what they can do is give you a tour of your area if you want to, give you some more information. So the number there is 800-800-3271. Mention the key code 200 off to our sales rep, and mention Real Estate Sales Solutions. And I'm guessing maybe you can link to everybody as well on this, Greg.
Yeah, I sure will.
We will give a discounted rate to any of your referrals. Normally the price is about $1,000 a year for unlimited data per individual agent or team. But if you mention this broadcast, our partnership, it's $200 off. So it'd be $795 for the year.
That's a great value. Great value. Right. Well, again, I said I started my first day as a prospector for my father over 20 something years ago. And I was using your books, and now I'm still using your data. I'm just doing it through the computer at this point. So thank you for, being a great partner for me in my business. And I hope that, for anybody that finds this information helpful, reach out to Cole and their staff and see if it's a good fit for you.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Tyler, Greg. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, man.
Thank you. Talk soon.
Yes, sir.